Tiana had dark long, straight, black hair and dark tanned skin. Her eyes were solid black without pupils, and she was a slender woman, weighing about 105 pounds. A cloak hung over her head. Tiana was a ruthless leader who held the reins tight. She came from a culture where women ruled and men held no place other than being slaves and a way to procreate. She enjoyed the tortures too, a common practice among the women of her society. Annual tortures of men in special chambers that were usually custom designed and filled with devices, whips, chains, and other toys used. Each night, Tiana would sleep above her chamber, where she delighted in the sounds of pain inflicted on her slaves. When Tiana was young, a draconian attack took place on her planet and they destroyed many of the cities. Death and destruction turned her into a person of vengeance and hate. Dark emotions, with an even darker path, and no man had ever been in charge of this planet called Lexi. Men became the brutal outlet for all destructive thoughts and emotions.
Tiana fought her way to the position of head priestess, overthrew her queen, and took her place. She would build a society under the strictest of terms, making all men fodder in battle, or slaves to women. The women looked down on the men, and thought of them as lesser beings. This was called order among disorder, after years of being hunted by the draconian. These women warriors grew in power, after holding off one invasion after the other. Life meant little to these women, but they would fight until the last of them remained standing. Men were allowed to fight in battle in order to stay alive. When they were no longer good at fighting though, they were turned into slaves. The men who were slaves did manual labor, and if they couldn't, they are then tortured to death. In Tiana's mind, this was the gracious side of her rule. Instead of killing all of the men, she knew that they had to help with procreation. While they served their purpose in the way of impregnation, they could work and fight if they wished to remain alive. Nobody knew what the cause for this kind of society, and the hostility that these warrior women had for men. It was just that way.
One night, while torturing her slave, Zutra watched Tiana through his pool of visions. He was attracted to her sultry looks and slender body. She was a fine physical specimen that Zutra could not turn away from, and he had to have her as a wife. While Tiana's slave was in his cell, one night, Zutra visited him and disguised himself as the slave. He took the slave's place in Tiana's custom-made torture chamber, filled with all kinds of mortal devices. As Tiana beat Zutra with her whip, the blood from each gouge of his skin began to saturate the whip, then fell to the floor. Blood spattered, hitting Tiana in the face, and she fell drunk with a sense of pleasure. She began to hit Zutra harder and harder, but it wasn't enough. Soon, she was soaked in the blood that drained from Zutra's body. Zutra seduced Tiana that night, making love to her and impregnating her with his third child, consummating his marriage to her and making her one of his wives. Anger from the act enraged Tiana. Though she was married to Zutra, she never allowed him to claim her. She revolted against him every chance she could, and swore vengeance upon him for his trickery.